Yeah, we good. I'm here. We're on. A minute late, sorry. Thank you for joining us for our 40-something, 47th, whatever. I don't know what it is. It's getting up there. Not quite 50, but close. Episode of the SilviaFindings live stream. My name is Mark. I'll be your live stream host today. We're going to continue on with some more rings. Mostly we're getting up there where most of the all the small rings, small settings are done. We're mostly doing big ones. There might be one or two medium or small ones there, but we're mostly doing medium. We might actually bleed into starting some of the giant settings, the men's rings, the ones that are just monstrous. I love them. And then hopefully pretty soon, maybe not next week, but the week after, we'll start doing the pearl settings. The rings with the pearl cup and peg things, which, boy, there are a ton of those cup and peg rings that you can use for other things. And if you've watched any of my other live streams, you know what I'm going to say. Epoxy resin. Anyway, before we get started, though, I just want to do a little housekeeping. Of course, any orders you place today during the live stream, you'll get your 10% discount off the regularly priced items. And free shipping for regularly priced items under $100. Because if it's more than $100, then we have to claim, we have to pay for insurance, and then it, so anyway. But if you share this live stream, if you share this video on Facebook now, if you're watching this later on YouTube, pointless to share it, but I guess you could share it. I guess if you do that, we'll send you one of these little polishing cloths. Just let us know. As a gift to you, because we love you, we miss you, we miss doing all the shows. We were just talking about yesterday about the possibility of their, hopefully shows starting up again in the late summer or the fall. Bonnie Ferguson, is that Bonnie, my cousin Bonnie? Holy crap. I don't know if that's you. I can't see through the little avatar, but I have a cousin who's named Bonnie Ferguson. That's so weird. Hi, Bonnie, if that's you. Nice to see you. I was just on a live stream with all my brothers and sisters this morning. The notary dealing with my mom's estate. Nobody else needs to know about this, but Bonnie might find it interesting. What else? Again, if you have any, it is you. Hi. Nice to see you. You know what? For some reason, it seems like the only people who come on and well, occasionally we have some like normal customers, but usually it's only ex-students of mine or relatives now. That's awesome. Hi, nice to see you. If you have any questions about anything jewelry related or not, I'll answer whatever questions you throw at us. We're here. We're a resource for you to use however you like. Right now, shipping is typically bad. Domestically, it's bad. We shipped something to Ontario. It was the last thing I looked at. I mean, obviously we ship stuff every day. Although it seems more and more that customers are congealing more in the West, and the East Coast customers are ordering more stuff but fewer times because the wait is ridiculous. We're supposed to be a first world country, right? We have the postal service. I mean, I get it. We're spread out. There's not a lot of people for a whole lot of space, and it's gotta go, and we gotta serve everybody, and yes, yada, yada, yada. I get it. I understand. Shipping into the US is typically awesome because we're not shipping letter mail, we're shipping parcel mail, so none of the shenanigans with sorting machines or any of that stuff gets affected. Yeah. Shipping into Europe, again, is still as bad as it's ever been, although some countries are worse than others. France, get it together, dudes. You have so much other stuff that's just awesome, but your postal service is almost as bad as ours. So yeah, anything shipping into Europe, you got to count on at least minimum 45 days. They say up to 75 days. I've never seen it actually take that long. It's close sometimes, but 45 days, a month is normally when people start complaining, hey, where's my stuff? It gets there eventually, but that's it. And custom orders, boy, we're just doing so much custom stuff lately. It's awesome. We love it. You know, we have the new 3D printer here that we can print the castable resin prototypes to make sure that things, and one thing, I guess I can announce it here, it must be somewhere else, it must be on the website by now, but we used to not allow people to send us your stones in advance because, you know, liability things. I don't want to be responsible for your stones on the way, you know, but we invested in a fancy schmancy 3D scanner that's just mind-bogglingly cool. So when we put the stones in the scanner and we do the 3D scan, it generates a 3D CAD file, STL file, if you're familiar with those 3D printing terms. And from that, the designers who actually design the jewelry, do the CAD design of the jewelry, they can use a stone file to build the setting around so that the settings are always perfect, you know, because sometimes, boy, diamonds, you know, are one thing, you know, the cuts are almost always very traditional, very regimented, you know, because it's like super expensive, fabulously overpriced stones, if you ask me, and artificially inflated to the moon prices, but that's the diamond industry is a whole different animal. The colored stone lapidaries, you know, a lot of times the way they cut the stones will change depending if the stone, if the material is very light. You know, they might cut a really, really deep pavilion to enhance the color of the stone, or just because they want to have some funky effects on the front, you know, because how the light passes through and reflects off the facets will change depending on how you cut the pavilion, you know. So sometimes they'll cut these really ridiculously deep pavilions or ridiculously sharp angles off the girdle. I don't want to get too technical, but generally seats for rings, pendants, those kind of things, the seat that the stone sits in before you push the prongs over or however you're setting it, are designed for the more traditional angles, and sometimes the crazy angles that you see almost, I would say it's kind of the majority of colored stones are cut with weird, you know, pavilions. They end up sitting too high in the seat, and then the prongs either have to be longer or you have to adjust the seat. Anyway, doing with this custom stuff that we're doing with the 3D scanner, if you send us your stones, you know, we'll scan them and they'll be perfect every time. Anyway, that was my point. Okay, we're gonna carry on with the thing, getting to the exciting part. Let me just switch this around and I love my high-tech. Our first item this morning, MTR 043 with a retail price of $16.82 and a wholesale price of $12.11. This is for a 6x8mm oval cabochon or cut stone. Probably a cab would be better for this. And the prongs are not super tall. Good sized basket though, so definitely a cut stone will work. I like that split shank and that kind of, I don't know, the little heart in the middle at the end of the split shanks. Okay. My next item, MTR 191B with a retail price of $23.69 and a wholesale price of $16.27. This is for an 11x11mm square, or you could just call it 11mm. It's kind of assumed if it's a square that if you say one measurement that all the measurements will be the same. But it's got a nice deep basket, you know, not super tall prongs. So ostensibly it's designed for a cut stone with a, could be whatever pavilion you like there. It's a nice deep basket. So unless it's a ridiculously deep pavilion that won't extend into the finger space. So that should be good. Oh, I didn't fix my nails this morning. So that, yeah, I love this kind of like I don't know, traditional basket, not really a traditional basket, but just a very interesting, you know, sort of cool basket effect. Here's one that's kind of a spiritual cousin of one of the, you know, last week we had a couple of these that I talked about, and I just love that super cool setting. This is another one that's similar to that, though, with prongs. MTR 279 with a retail price of $44.71 and a wholesale price of $28.69. This is for a 13 by 15 oval. This I guess probably would be considered a men's ring. You could, I don't know, kind of girly. Well, unisex. It's a unisexual ring. These prongs, again, if you're putting a cut stone in there, you know, because a cut stone or a cab will fit in there. It's got that beveled seat, you know, with the seat raised just up around the edges. So it's kind of like a hybrid. You can set either stone in there. With the prongs that are super tall like this, you probably have to trim those down a little bit and dress the ends, make them beautiful before you set them. I always like to also, you know, using a Kratex wheel or, you know, something like that, grind the inside edges of these round prongs a little bit so they're a little bit flat. That just makes them a little bit easier to set. Again, because traditionally, you don't want the prong to extend more than halfway up up the crown, right? Too technical? Am I getting too technical? I'll try not to. Everybody knows what the parts of a gemstone are, right? Pavilion, crown, all that stuff. Girdle. MTR 066 with a retail price of $28 and a wholesale price of $20.79. This is for a 13 by 18 millimeter oval. Of course, this is for a cabochon, with that lovely deep bezel seat. Now this bezel is, you know, way too thick to be able to push over onto, even if it's a real low dome cab. I don't think you could push that over onto the cab to hold it in place. So you definitely need to glue it. And we always recommend a really good two-part epoxy for that kind of stuff. It's just a gorgeous, you know, split shank ring with a kind of a flourishes that give it kind of almost like a floral effect, but it's not really a flower, but it's just kind of cool. I don't know. I like it. Almost, I don't know why. It feels Victorian to me, even though the elements are not Victorian, but it feels that way. MTR 156 with a retail price of $32.49 and a wholesale price of $23.96. This is for a 14 by 15 millimeter oval. I know it looks round, but you might be able to get away with putting a 14.5 millimeter round in there. I think ostensibly it was meant to be, but just somehow in the casting or something, one side ended up longer than the other. So nice deep basket. I love that faux filigree shoulders, right? I think the nice open curls, waves. They do look like waves to me. Curly cues. Really super good notched prongs, right? Love those. For a cut stone, this is awesome. Probably a cab might be tricky to set unless it's a really low dome cab, because depending on how high the edges of the cabochon is, these prongs might not get high enough up to grab it. This MTR 158 with a retail price of $37.54 and a wholesale price of $23.46. This is for a 13 by 17 millimeter marquise stone. Golly. You know what? I've set cabs in here, but I think a cut stone is better. Just because of the way the prongs are and the seat is. Again, definitely you could put a cab, you could put a cabochon or a cut stone in there. Either will work. I love that. Very cool with, you know, with the shank coming up on the shoulder and enveloping the seat, the basket. Very cool, very simple, very elegant. And when it's done, right, so the prongs will go over onto the stone, and you'll just have these two little rectangles on either side of the stone when you see that as a setting. So it'll look like almost like the ring comes right up to the side of the stone. It's kind of a cool effect when it's complete. Oops. I'm jumping ahead. I pulled something from the wrong row. MTR 050 with a retail price of $30.33 and a wholesale price of $24.19. This is for a 12 by 16 millimeter cabochon. Just a very classic split shank, right, with a nice deep bezel. You know what I'm gonna say every time I see one of these. So obviously a cabochon would need to be glued in there, would look awesome. But this is also a perfect ring for playing with epoxy resin. And this is big enough, this 13 by 18 millimeter, or no, 12 by 16 oval. If you had like a little, like a real good high resolution photograph, and you cut it out and glued it to the bottom of that, and then poured clear resin, right? If you hold the ring perfectly level, you can kind of overfill it enough to that surface tension will hold. And I know this because I've tried it myself. Surface tension will hold the resin in place, and you'll end up with like a nice little dome, and it almost magnifies the little thing on the inside. So you can put very cool little pictures or whatever. And these kind of things are really super popular with people who are doing that commemoration jewelry. I never remember the exact words they use. You know, the people who do like, if you have, you know, they send you your grandma's ashes or whatever, some breast milk that they dehydrate and they mix with the two-part epoxy and, or not the two-part epoxy, but the epoxy resin. I mean, those are two parts, those resins. And then they mix in like little crushed gemstones, or lots of different color effects you can get in there. And then they set them into things, and then you can have like a breast milk ring. I know it sounds gross, but it's a real business, and people love it. I think it started with the ashes. People using cremation ashes in the jewelry, and then it spiraled out of control from there, in my opinion. MTR 331, $26.51 is a retail price and a wholesale price of $19.89. This is for a 12 by 15 millimeter cabochon. Now, I know that this one you may have noticed is an adjustable ring, but we've discontinued all of our adjustable, well, not really discontinued them. We just, we made them sized now. So this ring, we might have, I didn't check, we might have a couple of the adjustable ones left, but these are almost all sized now. So if you look on the website and you looked up this ring, you'd see that you could pick whatever size you wanted. I don't know, I just find the concept of adjustable rings to be a little, well, we'll just say we prefer having them sized. These have got nice tall prongs, you know, with flat inside, domed on the outside. So, boy, any old cab in the universe will fit in there. I don't think I've ever seen a cab that was too thick to fit in that thing, especially with these super good prongs. Oh, and I keep jumping ahead again. Let me do these first. So, MTR 303 with a retail price of $42.65 and a wholesale price of $28.43. This is for a 12 by 17 millimeter oval cabochon. Definitely would not want to put a cut stone in there, because the pavilion obviously will extend into the finger space and make you cranky when you put your finger through there, because it'll scratch you all up. But so this is ostensibly designed for cabochons. It's just got a cool, I don't know what that is, some kind of cool, you know, it doesn't have to mean anything, it just has to look cool, right? So whatever that is, very cool. Carvings in the shoulder, nice wide one. You know, this would is a unisex ring, but I don't know. I can't think of a man who would say, hey, no, that's too girly. I can't wear that. MTR 048 with a retail price of $36.95 and a wholesale price of $29.44. This is for a 10 by 12 millimeter oval cabochon. Again, it would have to be glued in there. Golly, that seat is not very centered, is it? So it doesn't matter because it's for a cabochon. That would get glued in there. Just, I don't know what else to say about this. Nice wide shoulders, right? Simple, solid, awesome. Now don't let the the uneven opening here, the seat, fool you. I promise the setting is centered on the ring. I wish I had a cab that was that size. I would just stick it in. I'm pretty sure I do. Well, neither here nor there. MTR 149 with a retail price of $20.44 and a wholesale price of $14.31. This is for a 9 by 11 millimeter oval. Again, this is super popular ring with classic split shank with kind of hearts, right? You see the hearts? Oh, they're so cute. Very simple, elegant basket. With the hybrid seat, so you could put a cut stone in there, you could put a cabochon in there. If you're putting a cut stone in there, just again, make sure that the pavilion isn't too long to extend down into the finger space. And I don't even know if that's a word, I just invented it, finger space. But it's a good word. Anyway, nice tall prongs with a flat inside, rounded outside, so a cabochon would fit in here gorgeously. I love it. Here's one, boy, I'm barreling right along here. MTR 157 with a retail price of $31.13 and a wholesale price of $23.36. This is for a 13 by 14 millimeter heart. Now, when we measure hearts, we measure them width first and then height second, width by height. So this would be for a 13 millimeter wide, and it's always at the widest points, right? So it would be 13 millimeters at the widest points here, and then 14 millimeters at the widest points, you know, there. Not from down inside the cut, but from the outside edge of the heart down to the bottom. This has got, this obviously is for a cut stone, right? And you could probably put a cab in there if it's not a super high domed cab. It would also ideally have a really pointy at the point at the bottom, because this is kind of a split. It's kind of a weird hybrid. It's a split prong here, but it's a chevron, right? So you need the point to be able to fit down into that thing. And it's a pretty deep, you probably can't see on the camera, but it's a pretty deep opening for the tip of the stone to fit in there. So as long as it's kind of pointy, it doesn't have to be super pointy. Super pointy obviously would be better, a little bit more secure. But if it's a cut stone, right, the seat is doing most of the work in keeping it secure, and the prongs are just holding it in place so you can't slip it, you know, out or sideways, if that makes sense. If it's a cabochon, then it's going to be sitting flat on there, and then the point is way more important, because all of the security happens at the prongs and the point. Because if it's a rounded point and it's a cabochon with a rounded point, and you put it in here, if you knock this stone, it's possible that it could slip out, right? Pointier things, but you know, I love this nice big wide shoulder, right, with that faux filigree lattice work way around the inside. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous ring. Where am I? I'm here. MTR 270 with a retail price of $32.91 and a wholesale price of $21.13. This is for an 8 by 10 millimeter oval cut stone or cabochon. with these giant prongs. Look at these giant prongs. Those are awesome. There's no cabochon in the world I've ever seen that you couldn't set in this thing with these giant prongs. Now, obviously, if you're setting a cut stone right where the girdle goes right up against the bottom of the seat, you might need to cut these down a little bit, I think. And I am going to, we're just having issues with cameras right now, but I am going to be producing a couple of videos in how to, or it'll just be one video in how to do this kind of thing, how to shorten the prongs, or the best way to shorten the prongs. Or maybe I should say the easiest way that I've found to shorten the prongs. Because, you know, there's no right way or wrong way to do any of this stuff. There's just a way or another way. And, yeah. I love the nice wide shoulders with, again, that faux filigree. This is almost, God, you know, this, never mind. I was going to let my geek card fly here and say this is so similar to the, if you've ever seen J.R.R. Tolkien's signature. Never mind. I've lost half the audience with one remark. That's awesome. Never mention J.R.R. Tolkien on a jewelry live stream. Good to know. MTR 173 with a retail price of $30.83 and a wholesale price of $22.50. This is for a 50. I'm sorry. I'm still terribly amused by the whole J.R.R. Tolkien thing. 15 by 20 millimeter, yeah, stone. So not really a rectangle, not really cushion cut, you know, it's curvilinear on two sides and flat on two sides. This is one of those lapidary specials, right? When, you know, if you're cutting your own, you know, cabs or something, and, you know, this is one of those things where, ooh, I love this ring, let me cut a cab for it, you know, kind of thing. That's what that is. Nice wide shoulders, super interesting basket. You know, you probably could, you know, well, cut stone would be better just because I'm looking at the position of these prongs, and if it were a cab, I can't see a cab that would be 100% secure in this ring. So it's got to be a cut stone. Our next item, and we're getting to the end of this tray soon, MTR 352 with a retail price of $36.54 and a wholesale price of $25.58. This is for an 8 by 10 millimeter rectangle stone cabochon or cut stone, so a baguette, emerald cut, you name it. Now, if you're depending on if the corners are pointy or the corners are beveled slightly, beveled corners obviously work way better for this kind of thing when the prongs are in the corner. These don't have notches in the inside edge of those things. I mean, they do, but they're not super deep. You could, if it's a cut stone, I would have no problem putting a pointy cornered cut stone in here. If it's a cabochon, boy, I would probably get in there with a little tiny ball burr and make little deeper notches in there just so that it holds the corners in. If it's a cabochon. If it's a cut stone, you know, again, the seat does 90% of all the security work there. What do you think? Anyway, I just love this segmented, you know, big box shoulder. Obviously hollow, right? But just super interesting shape, and I don't know why, but it looks Egyptian to me. Maybe it's because it looks like big giant stone blocks. MTR 168 with a retail price of $28.23 and a wholesale price of $20.24. This is for a 12 by 14 millimeter oval. Boy, cabochon, cut stone, you name it. You can put whatever you like in there. And this is similar to that the marquise, right? Stone that I showed you before, where, you know, the ring comes up and makes that, you know, that right up, you know, against the side of the basket. So when the stone is set in there, you'll be left seeing, obviously you'll see the prongs on the corners of the stone, but you'll also see these little dots where the split shank of the ring comes up. So it'll look like the split shank of the ring comes up and the ring itself is holding onto the stone. I mean, it's not. It's holding onto the seat. But it's just a cool effect, right? So these prongs are, you're not really going to push these over onto the stone. Those are going to be mostly for decoration. These obviously will do all the work if it's a cabochon, and only 10% of the work if it's a cut stone. If it is a cut stone in here, boy, just be careful again of the pavilion. You can get away with a lot of cut stones, but I've seen some that are just ridiculous. MTR 055 with a retail price of $34.99 and a wholesale price of $21.87. This is for a 13 by 18 millimeter oval cabochon. Obviously, it's got to be a cab with those secure bars. The oh boy, I'm tired. This is a lovely split shank, pretty wide shoulders, right? Split shank. And I just love how the prongs, instead of, you know, being straight up, they extend sideways out the side. So the actual size of the seat is smaller than that 13 by 18. But the 13 by 18 extends all the way to right about there in the prongs. So it's just super cool how the prongs will look like they're coming up around the outside of the stone. Gives it kind of like a, I don't know, prehistoric sort of feel to it. I love that. It's kind of interesting one. You don't see a lot of those where the prongs are sticking out the side of the seat. MTR 057 with a retail price of $42.55 and a wholesale price of $31.47. This is for a 10 by 14 millimeter cushion cut cab, a rectangular cab, curvilinear cabochon. Curvilinear rectangle. That's a word. I made it up. I didn't make it up. Curvilinear is actually a word, but normally you don't call them curvilinear rectangles. Very cool scallops, right? All the way up the sides of the shoulder. Pretty nice wide shoulder. And again, this would, cabochon would have to be glued in there. The bezel wall is not super thick, but it's thicker than it would be to easily, I mean, you could, but it wouldn't be easy. They're pretty thick, you know. And again, you know, you know what I'm going to say. If it's a solid, you know, opening like this, perfect for like two-part epoxy, you know, pouring epoxy in there for those commemorative rings, commemorative jewelry, commemorative pendants, you name it. We got so many requests for that kind of stuff. MTR 165 with a retail price of $30.38 and a wholesale price of $22.11. This is for a 15 by 17 millimeter oval cabochon or cut stone. Cut stone, I think, definitely needs to be a cut stone in there. Look how deep that, because if you put the cab and you actually put the cab where the notches are on these things, all this would be empty space, and I think it would look weird. You know, and there's always the potential of something knocking the cabochon from underneath, you know, at these scallops. So definitely a cut stone with a nice deep pavilion would be perfect for that. So you could see a lot of the pavilion, or you know, inside the crown of that thing. Lovely split shank into a nice solid base. And just a very cool, interesting seat. You know, how the seat itself are the prongs. Very cool. And is this the, really? This is the last one on this tray, and then we're gonna get to some of the some of the giant rings. MTR 347 with a retail price of $31.31 and a wholesale price of $20.87. This is for a 15 by 20 pear-shaped stone. Now again, when we measure the pears, we measure them width first, so there's 15 millimeters wide at the widest point and 20 millimeters tall, right, from the tip and to the bottom. This would have to be probably glued in. It's a pretty deep bezel, so you could definitely get away with, and it's not super thick, so this you could definitely push over onto the cab and not use glue. Probably use a good two-part epoxy anyway, just for added security. And if you are going to push this bezel wire over onto the stone, boy, really imperative that when you do it, you start from this end and, you know, do a little bit, you know, push a little bit this way and then a little bit that way, and then just keep going, just keep moving further and further away from the tip. Because when you're pushing bezel wire over onto stone, you're making the outer edge, right, smaller than the perimeter that it was. So you're actually compressing material when you're pushing this over onto the stone. Right, because right now, if the outside edge is that, what is it, 15 by 20, and you push this bezel wall over onto the stone, if you measured the inside edge of the bezel wall when you're done, it might be, you know, instead of 15 by 20, it might be like 14.75 by 19.75 or something, you know, or, you know, whatever it is. So the metal has to compress at some point. And if you start pushing this over here at this end, you know, and working out, right, it's going to push, it's going to push, it's going to stretch, it's going to compress, and this area is going to get really loose, and then when you get up to here, it's going to kink, right? So if you start this way, you can push this over and push this over thing, and then probably if it were me, I would do this, work about a quarter of the way down either side, and then start, you know, in this way, you know, and push this up this way. When it's a nice easy curve like this, there's a lot of room for material to compress. There's not a lot of room for material to compress over here. So if you start at the whatever, the easy curves, and move up to a sharper curve, you're going to end up with the material kinking, and then it'll look ugly. But if you do it, you know, the right way, that's one of the oldest bench jeweler's tricks in the book. All right, so that's it for the medium rings. Now we're gonna move on to, got some giant rings. We'll see how far we can get in the next what is it, 21 minutes. MTR 141 with a retail price of $62.55 and a wholesale price of $43.78. This is for a 13 by 18 millimeter cabochon. Again, this bezel wall is pretty thick, but you could probably, you know, push this over onto the stone without marring it too badly. You'll definitely have to burnish the edge after you've done it. But if the stone fits perfectly, probably best to just glue it in there and maybe push the top edges of these curves over just so they follow the curvature of the stone and there's not a little gap in there. I just love that outside frame, right? Just, you know, little kind of almost random notches that don't look very random, right? Up the nice big shank, or pretty normal size shank down at the bottom, but, you know, right up the, you know, the shoulder. Just super interesting texture. Very cool ring. Very cool ring. We've got this ring. Now this, oh God, I love this ring. I have a good story about this ring too. MTR 281 with a retail price of $67.65 and a wholesale price of $43.42. This is for a 15 by 20 millimeter cabochon. And again, most of these men's rings that I'm going to show you, and again, men's quote men's rings, they're kind of unisex. But they're giant, so we call them men's rings. And I think most of these we only have in sizes like 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, just the bigger sizes. Anyway, this is for, you know, what did I say it was? For a 15 by 20 millimeter oval cabochon or cutstone. Cutstone will work great in here. I had a customer want to do a custom version of this for a stone that was so huge. And I thought, oh, and the ring was only a size 5, believe it or not. So, I mean, there was a lot of messing around with edge geometry to get that to work. But we did. It ended up adding like 2 more of these rows of that flower thing. So it was like super... I want to say that it looked ridiculous because of the scale of everything, you know, the little tiny ring with the giant stone in there, but I bet it looked awesome when it was on. It's one of those things that, you know, you wear to the grocery store and people are like, oh, I was going to buy that can of potatoes. Neither here nor there. MTR 143 with a retail price of $40.11 and a wholesale price of $29.94. 17 by 23 millimeter oval. Again, nice, that faux filigree split shank with the ABCs on the inside of that. That's so cool. I don't know, maybe if you're a grade school teacher, there's something for everyone. Now, so obviously this is for a cab, probably not a really common size, 17 by 23, although I have seen them. It's just, you know, if something works, it works. You could also, and I'm gonna get it, you know, some things I find funny that nobody else does, and that's okay. You could seal the back off with a piece of electrical tape, masking tape, something. Probably electrical tape would be better, smoother, and then fill that with epoxy resin. You knew I was going to go there. Here's another one, MTR 280 with a retail price of $61.05 and a wholesale price of $39.16. This is for a 12 by 16 millimeter oval cab or cut stone. Again, the seat is a hybrid, so cut stone will work great in here because it's a nice deep basket. Never mind the prongs. You know, when we go around to shows, these are all on trays, and the trays get stacked one on top of each other, and sometimes the prongs get bent. But a little doink with a pair of pliers, and poof, you're back in business. I love this filigree, you know, curly cues, right? Kind of that faux filigree shoulder basket. Lovely, it's just gorgeous. Love that open framework. Okay, confession. I actually never noticed that was ABCs on here before until I looked at it on the camera. It's awesome. Now that I know that, though, I know I have like at least 3 or 4 people I can suggest that to. MTR 225, they're teachers, yeah, great teachers. MTR 225 with a retail price of $61.47 and a wholesale price of $41.13. This is for 11 by 15 millimeter oval. Yeah, cabochon or a cut stone. You can put whatever you like in there. Cabochon would have to fit exactly the right size because obviously there's almost no seat to speak of there for the cab to fit on there. Even though the prongs are ostensibly cabochon prongs because they're flat on the inside and rounded on the outside. I just love this very kind of Art Deco pillars almost, right? Up around the big wide silver, you can't really call it a halo if it doesn't have stones, right? Is that the rule? It has to have stones to be called a halo around the outside of the seat, the setting. MTR 068 with a retail price of $49.10 and a wholesale price of $39.72. It's for a 12 by 14 millimeter cushion cut cabochon. Again, just very simple, elegant, you know, shank that gets really super wide up near the top. Love this kind of ring. They never fit my fingers because I have like freakishly big fingers from, I guess, doing all that stone pushing over the years. Excuse me. MTR 065 with a retail price of $54.92 and a wholesale price of $34.33. It's for 13 by 18 millimeter oval. Another real simple lovely big shank, right, with a nice big oval seat. Cabochon would have to be glued in there. The seat doesn't get, or the bezel kind of does right up the thing. Is so if your stone fits perfectly in there and there's not a lot of, you know, gaps, you could probably push the tops of this bezel wire over onto the thing. Once you get past this depth, right, then it just gets too thick. You can't push that over. Recommend gluing the stone in there anyway with a good 2-part epoxy, but you might be able to get away, if the stone is a perfect fit, you might be able to get away with pushing just that bezel wall over on there. You can probably get away with a cut stone in there too. That's pretty deep seat. Not really a basket, but MTR 232 with a retail price of $80.93 and a wholesale price of $51.93. This is for a 14 by 18 millimeter oval cabochon or cut stone. I put a cut stone in there, guaranteed. Gorgeous. And again, with these super tall prongs, you probably need to cut them down and dress them, make them beautiful. Again, I always like to grind the inside of these just a little bit flat. Because they're not really round, they're kind of oval right now, but I just like the inside to be more flat. I just find they sit better on the stones that way. Very cool shape, very cool, you know, shoulder pattern. MTR 253 with a retail price of $77.25 and a wholesale price of $49.56 is for a 15 by 19 millimeter oval cabochon or cut stone. Very cool. Palm fronds, right? Is that what that is? I don't know. Papyrus. I'm just making stuff up now. Yeah, it's sure. It's a ancient symbol for corn. Wheat, maybe wheat. I don't know. It is what you think it is, right? You bring in what you take with you. What is that? Isn't that what Yoda told Luke, right? Going into that cave on Dagobah? Oh boy, I lost the other half of the audience with the Star Wars reference. Love these big tall prongs. You could just do just about anything with them. Cabochons, cut stones, you name it. They'll work in there. Luke. MTR 227 with a retail price of $75.87 and a wholesale price of $50.76. This is for a 15 by 17 millimeter oval cabochon or cut stone. Although, boy, the cut stone would be really tricky in there with given how wide the seat is, how wide the opening is. But the nice thing about this is that section of the seat is, oh, I guess it is pretty thick. Okay, so it's not as easy as I thought it would be, but you could definitely file that out if you needed to put that, you know, a cut stone in there. It's not a super deep basket, so it'd have to be a pretty low dome or a pretty low pavilion anyway. So I think ostensibly we can say that this is designed for cabochons because of the prongs, right? Rounded on the outside, flat on the inside. Very simple, but elegant, you know, angular, you know, motif in the top with the hexagon, or no, I guess it's an octagon, and the, you know, the 4 cardinal points with the things. I don't know, almost dwarven. I shouldn't have said that. Not more Tolkien, and yes, MTR 133 with a retail price of $43.20 and a wholesale price of $27. So this is a tension mount, and you can put a cabochon or a cut stone in there. I didn't take a measurement of this, but I suspect that you couldn't get away with anything bigger than like probably a 10 or 12 millimeter stone, you know, round stone in there. Tension mounts are tricky. I'm not personally a big fan of them. I mean, I have seen some that are like, you know, really super ingenious, but I still, for some reason, always feel like You know, if you got really angry and punched somebody in the face with this thing, the stone would go flying. You'd lose the stone. But the way this is designed, obviously, you know, you could flex it, you know, sideways a little bit, but you can't really flex it open, you know, past a certain point, which is kind of the point of the tension mounts, but very cool if you dare. MTR 234 with a retail price of $73.09 and a wholesale price of $46.90. This is, again, typical men's rings profile, right, with the nice wide shank. I love those interlocking circles with that floral motif, and I know that no, I don't want to talk out of turn. I feel like I recognize the pattern as being culturally specific, but I can't really remember exactly, right? I just love that. Very cool. Again, with a seat like this, it's clearly designed for a cut stone. It's got a nice deep, you know, seat. So, boy, it would have to be a ridiculously deep pavilion, you know, to extend into the finger space here. Although I have set cabochons in this ring, so I know they work. Again, for a cab, and depending on how high of a dome it was on the cab, or definitely if it's a cut stone, you probably need to cut these down and dress the ends, make them beautiful, you know, push them over onto the thing. I like to, again, flatten the insides of the prongs a little bit, right? Because as they are right now, they're almost round. I love this ring. MTR 126 with a retail price of $50.46 and a wholesale price of $39.77. This is for an 8x12 millimeter oval cut stone, right? I can't remember ever setting a cabochon in here, but I have set lots of cut stones in here. I just love this, you know, 3D flower effect. It almost looks like it's fabricated, you know. Definitely someone took the time and skill to carve this wax prototype. Just gorgeous. Nice, pretty bulky too, pretty hefty ring. I love it. Very simple seat, but you know, down the shoulders, these flowers, fan flowers, whatever you want to call them. Just love them. MTR 254 with a retail price of $80.61 and a wholesale price of $51.73. This is for a 16 millimeter round cut stone. You could probably put a cabochon in there too. Sure, why not? The top of the seat is pretty high, right? So unless it's a ridiculously deep pavilion, right, that might not work. But so if it's a really, really high dome cab, it also might look weird, right? The stone might end up sitting, you know, so far away from your finger that it's like it's a whole other piece of jewelry. Anyway, very cool gouges, you know, all the way around the top of that. Make a nice little scalloped effect around the top. Just very simple, very elegant, very lovely. MTR 231 with a retail price of $67 and a wholesale price of $43. This is for a 10x13 millimeter oval. Again, simple, almost Art Deco kind of box, you know, shape ring with a nice wide shoulders and all these grooves all the way up to the top. Nice geometric effect, you know, up at the top. I love that profile. I see this profile and I have flashbacks to my jewelry school days when I used to teach a box ring class how to make that exact shape. Now that it wasn't hollow, they were solid. Well, not solid. They were hollow, but there was a the inside was filled in, if that makes sense. MTR 228 with a retail price of $67.86 and a wholesale price of $45.40. This is for a 12 by 16 millimeter oval cabochon or cut stone. Probably a cab would fit better in this. Two lovely deep scallops, right? Make a very interesting, you know, shape up at the top, almost like an hourglass, I guess. I don't know. Very cool. Very manly. MTR 259 with a retail price of $98.36 and a wholesale price of $63.11. This is for a 19 by 22 millimeter oval cut stone or a cab. Mind the bend prong here. This is just because of the display one gets trays stacked on top of them. Very cool mill grain effects all the way around. It's not really faux granulation. I think that's kind of more faux mill grain. I love this very cool dimpled effects just on the inside of that, the U shape on the shoulder. Very cool. We're getting close on just 2 more rings and we'll call it a day. MTR 238 with a retail price of $92.21 and a wholesale price of $59.17. This is for an 18 by 24 millimeter oval. Again, nice big tall shoulder with just some very cool starburst pattern with that faux mill grain. Yeah, that's granulation all the way around the bottom of that. Very interesting, very cool thing. I think when this is on, you would pretty much only see that pattern. You wouldn't really see any of the smooth ring on the inside. Very, golly, I don't know why it looks very Western to me, you know, like, yeehaw, something a cowboy would wear. Definitely. My last ring today is one of my favorites. You'll see why in a minute. MTR 306 with a retail price of $81.58 and a wholesale price of $50.99. This is for a 15 by 20 millimeter cab, and so obviously it's got to be a cabochon. You couldn't put a cut stone in there. And I just love that scroll work, that silver framework down on the bottom. So if you have a really, really pale stone, like a, you know, moonstone, like a rainbow moonstone that's not very rainbowy, or you know, an agate that's really transparent, you know, they look so good on these things. They've got that lovely cubic zirconias in the shoulders and those dimples all the way up. Right. So it's very simple, you know, edge framework. But with the right cab on there, that, you know, shows through gorgeously, and just super interesting, right? To see decoration underneath the stone instead of, you know, around on the outside of the stone. Pretty rare that you see that kind of stuff, but if rare and weird and, you know, that kind of thing is your thing, we've got you covered, because we have everything from like the most basic simple split shank rings up to, you know, that kind of, you know, lovely gorgeous weirdness. So that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us for the latest. Pretty good. Oh, 11:29. I'm like 1 minute early. I'm gonna blab on for a minute or two later, so I'm definitely gonna end up going over over the hour. But yes, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, hopefully the retail shows will start up again in the fall. You know, crossing our fingers. Let's get enough people vaccinated so that those kind of things can start happening safely. Yeah, I was gonna say something about Alberta, but I'm just gonna let it go. They would have shows now if you let them. But next week we'll continue on. I think we've got probably 2 more weeks of rings, and then I then I'm not sure what we're gonna do next. That's it. I mean, the whole point of these live stream videos is to have like a digital video catalog of all of our things. So I mean, I realize that not everybody is sticking through for the whole thing, and that's fine. Lots of people like to look at it after. I think the point was that we were going to, once these are up on YouTube, have listings of the SKUs, you know, so that if you were looking for a specific, you know, item, maybe you wanted to see what it looked like in the real world, maybe you wanted to have something explained about it. I think you can always call me on the phone, email me, you know, whatever. I'm always here to answer your questions about what the you know, the best way to use them, what do you do if, blah, 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 those kind of questions. I'm your product specialist, is what I like to call myself. Right, so I guess we'll see you next Wednesday, 10:30 Pacific, and extrapolate it out to whatever time you want, if you want to see this live, or otherwise we'll be up on YouTube eventually. Give us a like and subscribe. Why? I don't know. Maybe is your kind of thing. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of the planet, take care of your mental health, take care of each other, and keep making stuff. Don't ever stop making stuff. Don't wait for the right time. There's never a right time, or it's always the right time. Just make something. Doesn't have to be something new. If you're just not feeling it, just make something you've made before, something that's simple. You know, I don't know, if you're a jeweler and you're just bored, solder some jump rings together into a shape, do something. Because just the physical act of working with the material and working with a flame and a hammer, put a hammer in your hand, do something, you know, that's when the synapses start firing and the creative juices start flowing, and that's when happy accidents happen. You know, some of the most amazing creative stuff I've ever made is stuff that I made when I sit down and I just wasn't feeling it. I was just bummed out, just like, let me just, you know, mess around with some stuff. And next thing you know, something cool is happening, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And then you get excited, and then so trust me, don't wait for the right time. Now is the right time. What are you watching me? Go make something. We'll see you next week. All right. Bye.